is an interesting patriot. Originally enlisting during his time in Connecticut, he fought within major battles with the militia. He also was active in raids as a ranger, and he assisted in the capture of British vessels during his time as a sailor. John served a total of 4 enlistments between the years 1776 and 1780. He enlisted both through Connecticut and New York. His first enlistment was in Connecticut at the age of 17, where he served with the militia. This militia served in 2 specific battles. In New York, the first being the Battle of Throg's Neck, also called the Battle of Pell's Point. During this time, the Patriots delayed the British movement long enough for Washington to avoid being surrounded. The second was the Battle of White Plains. Both battles experienced significant losses for the Revolutionary Army. When it came time to re-enlist, John did so, this time with the company of Rangers. These Rangers conducted raids against the British along the east shore of the Hudson River. While this band of Rangers had many encounters, some of the most notable included ambushing a British camp of 40 soldiers. During the raid of this hideout, they captured many British loyalists. During that adventure, John discovered silver coins worth 40 British pounds. When he turned them over to his colonel, he was given 1/4 of them as a reward. On his third tour, John signed up as a sailor where he would serve aboard the Yankee privateer General Putnam. During this voyage, they captured 3 British merchant vessels, and 1 was loaded with salt. Of the 3 ships that were captured, 1 was sent to Boston, and the other 2 were returned to England. All of the British sailors signed a parole agreement stating that they would not take up arms against the colonies. John's 4th tour was most likely the most difficult. He re-enlisted with his brother James. They both intended to serve whaleboat service. This was an especially harrowing task as it required them to disrupt British foraging parties and conduct raids on British forces. While John initially experienced success, on one particular raid, the British Dragoons, a very specific group of cavalrymen, captured 5 Patriot crew members, including John. John was held captive for 13 months. They were held in a British-occupied prison in New York City known as the Sugar House. It should be noted that sugar houses were not sweet places for prisoners. Conditions in these prisons were horrific. Prisoners were often fed soggy, moldy bread infested with worms. Eventually, in 1780, John and the others were released in a prisoner exchange. John had suffered during his incarceration, and he was notably underweight. Yet, in spite of his weak condition, his determination led him to re-enlist only 1 month after his release. The highlight of his 5th and final tour was a raid in Fort George, New York, where they captured 40 British soldiers that were stationed there. After his service in the Revolutionary War, John remained a sailor at sea for 6 to 7 years, and in 1788 he married Sally Riker of Maine. The couple lived in Connecticut and New York and had 10 children. Many of their children contributed to establishing towns and communities here in Michigan. John and Sally's children came to Michigan with many descendants of other Revolutionary War patriots. While we do not know exactly what led them to Michigan, various historical documents lead us to understand the value and honor that both John and Sally instilled in their children about our individual duty to love our nation and to work to make our communities a better place. Sacrifice was much more than an idea. It was a way of life. From some articles written about the children, several gave credit to both John and Sally for the devotion to God, and that church participation in their local Methodist congregation was both patriotic and an act of worship. Several articles talked of Sally's ability to make a loaf of bread that healed the soul and soup that healed the body. John was reported to be a man of steadfast determination. When he set his mind to accomplish a task, he was successful. Sally passed away in 1847, and John passed away 2 years later in 1849 at the age of 90. I would like to invite Susan Bellows to come and share her thoughts on John and Sally Wall. Susan is a direct descendant of John and Sally and a member of the Lansing chapter.